Hello and welcome to the 17th episode of Comic Book Direct. Though in many ways, it's the first episode. I'm your host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Ethan. Now, if you're wondering why Ian said that it's the first episode, that's because due to some unintentional trademark claims, we have changed our name to Comic Book Direct, which is hopefully legal.
Yeah.
So, same routine podcast, same upload time, same structure of them, but just different look, different name.
And speaking of different looks, today we're talking about comic book adaptations and costumes to movies. Don't know if I said that too well, but what I mean is how movies take the costumes they see in comic books and translate them to the silver screen, right? Now there's a lot of importance on this because aside from obviously the name, the costume for comic book characters is one of the most defining visual aspects of any given superhero or supervillain.
So some of the examples I see on that point of how it kind of defines the hero is like in Iron Man over the movies.
Right.
His suit kind of evolves from old trashy coming out of a prison to new fighting extraterrestrial threats.
And he's definitely one of the forefronts of, that sort of link to the suit because his powers essentially are just the suit and, his incredible brains and that great mustache. But, there are other examples too, like Captain America. His suit may not be as vital to his whole personality, but the iconic imagery definitely defines his character, and it's important to translate that well. There's a lot of, weight and importance that's placed upon this idea and this idea of costume designing. So we're going to take a look at first what makes a costume adaptation good, and then what makes a costume adaptation not as good. Now, as we touched on in the previous episode where we spoke more in general about comic adaptations to movies, it doesn't always have to be exact. We don't expect perfection, right? But we do really want to have that mood and that feeling that we got from the comics imbued into the movie. So in that sense, what would you say is the perfect way to translate a comic book costume to a movie costume?
Really, I think that as long as the costume expresses the character, that's the main thing that counts. But right. I also like how with Scarlet Witch, you see her in the comics, she's wearing this huge red dress type thing.
Right.
And I mean, it's not necessarily something anybody would wear nowadays, but in the in the movie adaptation rather, she's wearing a more modern, still red dress type thing, right. But it's more modern, something that someone might wear.
Right, and that's something that's very important is modernizing costumes. Like say if there were a Karnak, a Karnak movie, that would be very difficult prior to All New, All Different to translate him into sort of the movie world because his costume before was so over the top and so difficult to translate. And there are a lot of costumes like that. And I think modernizing these costumes without losing the base is very important. Now, what I see as important is mainly the iconography of said costumes. Most costumes have a symbol on them, like Hawkeye's suit is, labeled by that sort of bullseye ring, right? And then you have his regular suit, and then you also see his Hawk Guy suit, where he still has that iconography, but it's on his regular modern type of TV shirt, or sorry, type of T-shirt, right? So I feel like actually you can learn a lot about how to adapt a comic book costume from the way comic book writers have adapted costumes over the years in different comics, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you, and so I'm going to talk about some of my favorite costumes, or
Sure.
costumes I think they did well in ideas.
Right.
I like the Spider-Man from Civil War. His costume, while it wasn't my favorite ever from a Spider-Man movie,
Uh-huh.
I like how they show the before he joins the team and after,
Right.
because the before looks like untrained little kid type
Tin
of
cans on his eyes sort of thing.
yeah. But then it changes to the actual movie costume, and I think that that's a good change, showing how he kind of evolves by being part of the team.
Absolutely.
Another costume I think that shows some nice change, though subtle, in the Flash TV show. You see Barry Allen running around with, I believe it's a red circle on his chest with the lightning bolt through it.
Right.
But then after he defeats Reverse Flash and everything, it changes to white, kind of showing that he's come to terms with himself and he's an evolved hero.
And that's another important thing that we don't often talk about, which is color. I feel like, Wanda's Scarlet Witch costume wouldn't have been as effective in the movie had they not incorporated the red motif, right?
Well, because her name is Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, and for other reasons. But color is a very important part of things, and not often can it be translated to screen with perfect accuracy. Like, for example, my favorite comic book costume is the Captain America, the first Avenger costume that showed up toward the end of the film. But we also, thankfully, got a chance to see his first costume, which was much more vibrant and much more bright and more reflective of the earlier comic days, right? And in the same way that the early comic book costume changed over time to reach what it is now, I think that the comic book movie costume changed over time, and we got to see that, and that was important. And it lost some of its vibrance, but it retained the colors that made it, Captain America. That's important.
So, what are some of... I touched on my favorite costumes. Right. I guess I'll go with one more costume. It's from The Flash again, but I do like that TV show. I like not so much Zoom's costume, right, but the fact that Barry's mask he just puts over his head and everything, but Zoom's mask he opens it from the back and it engulfs him, showing like
it's some more
dark
Venom type suit,
evil engulfing him. Right.
So, I said,
what are your favorites?
Yeah, costumes? Like I said, my favorite include Captain America from the first Avenger. I also liked Ghost Rider's suit. Like, if we're judging purely based off aesthetics, I gotta say, I love that Ghost Rider costume. It looked pretty accurate, pretty comic accurate. And like I said, it had that leather jacket feel. That was really the icon of the character in the comics. And they brought that well to screen. I mean, all you really need is a fiery skull, but hey, it was a good translation. I'm glad they got it right. And I also liked, and this is kind of a cop-out, but I liked Rocket Raccoon. Because as much as he differentiated from the original Rocket Raccoon, I feel like he reflected the evolution of Rocket Raccoon in the comics from, this weird green-wearing astronaut suit sort of Rocket Raccoon into more of a sleek prisoner type renegade that we've seen in, the 2014, 2013, 2015 Marvel Now series, right? Yeah, I like that idea of comic book costumes in movies, drawing on the same variations that comic book artists used, like where comic book artists had to modernize these costumes, so too do the movies have to modernize these costumes, and I think they did it well in Rocket Raccoon. I also had to say that all of Watchmen's costumes were just fantastic. They were very accurate to the originals, and I appreciate that very much.
Another costume I like is Hulk's, because it's pretty accurate to Hulk. Ripped jeans.
Of course, yeah. That must have been like all out on the side of the costume designing. I mean, CGI ripped jeans, those have got to be a pretty penny.
And I mean, there's so much symbolism in them, like blue jeans,
right?
Durable,
exactly.
Tough. Buy Levi's, please. We're making money off of this.
I'm actually supporting a different brand.
Ooh,
Wrangler.
Ooh,
built for men.
Yeah. I wish I knew the Levi's slogan.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I know the Wrangler slogan. I was just throwing one out there, and I thought it sounded right, so.
That might be right.
Alright, I'm going to touch on my least favorite costumes, and then I'm going to hand it over to you for your least favorite. I gotta say, love Daredevil. Love everything they're doing with that show, but I can't stand some of those costumes. Daredevil, I think his main costume for season 2 sort of had a very, mentally damaged sort of look with a very bleak face and a sort of muted body. And I understand why they changed it, because clearly the Daredevil costume in the original movie also didn't work well, but I feel like Daredevil's costume is just not one that has translated to screen well at all. Especially with his eyes. His eyes being just these white pinpricks of light do not make me any more comfortable and do not seem very intimidating. Instead, they just looked really weird to me. And of course, this is my opinion only, but I really wasn't a fan. Even Elektra, I did like her at some points, but I didn't feel like the costume was that exciting or that true to, her comic background. I feel like the scene in which she had her dress and she was invading sort of the, spoiler alert, hand tower, I feel like she didn't, or that was the best representation of her costume that we've had. I did like the Punisher. I did like his costume at the very end. But other than that, Daredevil costumes are not doing it for me. How about you?
My least favorite comic book adapted costume.
That was perfect. You almost sound as robotic as I do.
Thank you.
No problem.
Actually, my character is robotic, so that works. I might get hate for this, but I do not like Jarvis's Vision costume.
I agree.
His face is way too red. He's always sad, and he's boring.
I feel like that too doesn't really capture the current Vision we have. We don't have that big frilly green cape that I love so much. And also, I will say I love the sweater. The sweater was perfect. The sweater nailed the comics, but other than that, it really hasn't impressed me thus far. And I feel like the weird humanization of the face just doesn't fit.
And the colors they use are depressing.
Right.
Like you, if
It's
you
like
painted
Christmas
your room
if
that
you
color,
shot Santa.
you would be yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You just
Um,
shot Santa.
exactly. All right. So, if you're ready to move on,
I am.
you are?
I am indeed.
Perfect. Then we're going to move on to our reads of the week. So, kiddo, what do you have for us?
This week I read The Fix.
Ooh, the one I've been raving about.
You have been raving about it, and you did suggest it to me, so I did in fact read it. I think it's pretty funny.
Uh-huh.
It's got a bit more adult style humor,
Right.
and adult style words.
As is typical of Image's comics.
Yeah, definitely. And but I think it's a really cool concept, because
Uh-huh.
they're robbing old people, and
Right.
that.
It's kind of one of the most ridiculous premises, but it hasn't been explored much in comics before, and it's the perfect opportunity for hilarity. And the fact that they're cops makes it even better.
Yeah, it provides a lot of humor to the comic, as well as you kind of feel bad for the
Yeah.
old people.
And I feel like that's what the creative team does best. They're known for their humor, and I feel like, how did you think the art was?
I liked the art. It seemed very one tone to me.
Yeah, it was very muted colors.
Yeah, kind of like a wall color.
Like someone shot Santa Claus.
Almost.
Okay.
More pastelly though.
Pastelli?
Pastellic.
You heard it here first, folks. Pastellic. That's what the fix is. Alright, my read of the week, among others, was Moon Knight the Second. This series is so good so far. I will say there's a lot of cop-out art, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of big pages with lots and lots of white space. But they do use it in an artistic way, so I can't really fault them for it. I will say the story has been great so far. I don't entirely get it. It's a very confusing story, and there's a lot of intricacies. But essentially, what I've taken away from it is that the Egyptian gods are battling on a more celestial scale, and each one of them has certain avatars that Moon Knight is now interacting with in this sort of virtual reality world wherein he resides. It's a very interesting approach. It's a very interesting topic, and it's quite original, which is to be expected of the author. I can only see it getting better, and it's bar none one of my favorite ANAD titles so far. And you've been reading some All New, All Different. Do you have any favorites thus far, or are you still
I'm still
working
kind of
through
getting
them?
to know them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to read, and I've got to say, I know this doesn't correspond with my reads of the week as much, but ANAD hasn't really impressed me thus far. There's been certain titles that I've really loved. Let's see, Moon Knight, obviously. I've enjoyed Karnak, which wasn't really a surprise because I had a feeling that I'd enjoy Karnak. I've always liked the character, as I said, and it's kind of one of those characters that people don't appreciate as much that I feel like I've had the pleasure of appreciating. I've liked Weird World. All of the X-Men series are really hitting it off for me. Doctor Strange, Vision. But as a universe, I wouldn't say it's done a lot to impress me, just because I was expecting a full reboot and I got, a very soft, subtle change to the universe, and most of these changes didn't seem to be entirely necessary. I do like having the Ultimates in the world, though, and I'm excited to see where it goes, especially with Civil War 2 coming out soon.
Ooh,
Yeah, exciting.
excited.
I did also read the Ultimates this week, and that was a very interesting tie-in. It explored Captain Marvel's motivations. I hope we see Iron Man's motivations soon, though I feel like we have with all the setup with War Machine. Um, and we also got to see the Free Comic Book Day Civil War issue 0, which is exciting. We got Thanos with guns, baby.
Nice.
Thanos with guns. If that's not character development, what is?
Exactly what I was gonna pause and say.
Yeah, you were gonna have the pause in there because
I
that was
was.
dramatic and that was, fulfilling, I thought.
Question of the week?
Question of the week. All right. Well, there's some very important announcements to make first that do deal with the question of the week. But our email address has changed for, again, legal reasons. You can find us now at comicbookdirect@gmail.com, and you can also go to our website,
Well, I
which
spent
is
17 episodes trying to memorize the spelling, but now.
which is comicbookdirect.weebly.com. And if you were wondering, here is the spelling: COMICBOOKDIRECT. It's even simpler, even nicer, even easier.
Do we no longer have any articles?
Nope, no articles. We're not going with the Comic Book Direct, because, as you know, that doesn't circumvent trademark law. But we are going with Comic Book Direct, and we hope that'll be our name for the future as well. As far as I've researched, there are no claims to that name. So we're perfect.
We are.
Unless one of you decides to go out and trademark it.
In which case, please.
No, I was just talking to you.
Just me.
Yeah.
Just me. I have no.
Well, I did fire you, so you've got
reason.
some motivation
I
there.
am fired.
Yeah.
I am fired.
You are fired and burnt.
Legally fired.
All right. So our question of the week, as you might know from listening in, is going to be anonymous, but we can apply our own little name to it. So, Ethan, would you like to add a name to this character, this fellow?
Yeah, I think I can do that.
That's a terrible name.
I'm gonna name him 12-pound dumbbell.
All right, this question comes from 12-pound dumbbell. I've heard that Marvel plans on announcing one of their blank movie slots in the future. So, what movie do you want it to be, and why?
I'd love to see a Secret Avengers.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, I've always liked the Secret Avengers. They're pretty cool. Two, they have Taskmaster, and Taskmaster is Taskmaster. And
Taskmaster
three,
is your god.
it would have to introduce a few more characters, which would get our quota up for Infinity Wars.
Exactly. And what do you like about the sort of Secret Avengers team as a whole?
I like the covert operations, how they go in, get stuff done, and get out. Okay. It's not like they're destroying cities and everything, and then the government's complaining. But it's just they do what they need to do, and they get done with it.
Perfect. And after much deliberation, I'd have to say I'd go with an Avengers team as well. But you know who it's going to be?
Who will it be?
Young Avengers. I really like that team. They've got a lot of great chemistry. Some of the members, I'm so on, but they do have very good chemistry. They do have very good storylines, and Bendis' work with them was awesome. I liked it a lot. Or was it Bendis? Forget. Well, anyways, I like the team. I think they could work, and I think they could definitely identify with the younger audience that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has. And as we can see with Spider-Man, I think young actors are working out pretty well. So,
I love child actors.
absolutely. But obviously, they'd have to be a little more in their teens, but I think they could work out provided they get, actually good child actors.
Yeah, that's a necessity.
Yeah. All right. So, any more thoughts on the subject?
That's all from me.
All right. Then, before we leave, I want to make a few announcements. Uh, as we told you, there aren't going to be any major changes to our channel because of this rebranding that we've done. But one thing that we have decided to change for the better is our content a little bit. We're going to be adding shorts about every Wednesday, maybe every other Wednesday, depending on how much you guys respond to it and how often we can produce it. We already have one episode of this out, and it is gold. It is about Marco and Alana. They're gonna range from a wide variety of topics. This one just happened to be an essay about Marco and Alana and their future potential. But we may do in the future some animated shorts. I've heard you do stop motion.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing some of those, maybe.
Yeah, and I'm a connoisseur of pixel art, so you might see some of that on our channel as well. Some quick draws of that. And obviously those essays that we're doing. We hope to have that be a mainstay of our channel as well. We hope that it entertains you guys in a more video-based way than a listenership-based way, and that is only going to be on our YouTube page. And our YouTube page is, of course, Comic Book Direct. All right, any other thoughts? Any other announcements you need to bring up?
That's all from us. Have a great week.
Remember, you can find us on Spreaker, you can email us, and you can find us on our website at comicbookdirect.weebly.com. Have a great weekend, or week in general.